going to talk about a technique called vibrato. It's very closely related to another technique which is called string bending. I've done a video on that. I'll put a link in the description, which might make it a little bit easier for you to understand the concept of it. So if you're familiar with the idea of bending a string, it'll make it a lot easier for you to get your head around what we're doing with vibrato. I talked about bending a string. I was going to pick a note and then use my fingers to bend the note up to another note without doing another pick or without moving to another fret. I think in the example I used, the 5th fret on my E string, my 1st string, I was bending that note up from one note to another. That's a simple string bend. When I'm talking about vibrato, what I mean is using the string bending technique to bend the note up and then let it come back down again, and up and back down again, up and back down again in the same phrase. Hopefully you can hear it gives it kind of a wobbling effect on the note. You can, just like with the string bending, you can play that anywhere on any note just to add it a little bit more flavour onto the note. It's worth bearing in mind there's two things in your vibrato that give it the sound and the character of what you want to try and play when you're doing it. So when I'm bending a note, I'm going to bend it from one note to another note. So I'm going to start off on my 5th fret note, my A. In my bending strings video, I bend that up to the next fret up. It's my A sharp. So when I'm talking about how far we bend it, that's what I mean by how far we bend it, how much we alter the pitch of the note. So that's one of the things that we need to be aware of when we're playing a vibrato technique. The other thing that we need to be aware of is not how far we bend the note, but how fast we perform the technique. So again, using the same note, I'll play a slow vibrato on that same A note, just by bending the note up and down. It's quite a slow vibrato. You can also play it quicker using the same. I'm trying to use the same amount of bend to get the same pitch, but play it faster. So I'm using the same bending, the same amount of moving the string up, but I'm actually performing the technique a little bit faster to get a different feel to it. You can also perform it slower as well if you want to get a different feel using the same notes. It chokes out a little bit on the acoustic. It will be a little bit more clear on the electric. But again, like some of these other videos on these techniques, I've done it on the acoustic just to show that it can be done on the acoustic. You don't need an electric guitar or a special amplifier to make these things work. So the speed of the vibrato is something that's important. Usually that'll depend on the song that you're playing or the effect that you're trying to achieve. So in some songs you'll want that fast sort of very quick wobbling effect. In other songs you might want a slow effect. As I mentioned just quickly before, there's also how far you bend the string with a small vibrato. That's the term I use, a small vibrato. I don't know if that's the correct term for it, but I'm not bending the string very much at all. I'm just moving a little bit. It's actually not even a full semitone that I'm moving. It's less than that. It's just giving the note a little bit of a rise and fall. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you can bend the note quite a lot to produce more pronounced, wider vibrato. So I'm going up in pitch quite a lot and down in pitch quite a lot on that example. So depending on the type of vibrato you want to play, it's probably worth practicing it in all those different ways. Maybe start off with just a little bit. The reason it's called vibrato is if you imagine your hand vibrato, vibrato, when your hand vibrating, like you're sat in a car or a bus whilst you're going over some bumps, it's not going to keep still. A little bit like that. So that's where it gets its name from. It's quite a simple technique once you're familiar with string bending, but it's something that as you get more familiar with playing, a lot of guitarists have their own particular technique and feel for doing that, and that's one of the things that makes them stand out, as having their own unique sound. So once you get more practiced at it and get the feel for it, then you'll be able to do it in a variety of different ways and add the extra feel into the notes that you're playing. You probably don't want to play vibrato on every note that you play, because it'll just probably spoil the effect. It's one of those things that you use now and again, sometimes, to embellish a particular note that you want to give that ring to. Typically it'll be when you play maybe a series of notes, and on the last note of the series you might want to ring for a little bit, and you'll use vibrato just to give that note a little bit of extra flavour. And also the process of doing that little bending does help the note to ring on a little bit more than what it might do if you just left your note static. So if I was to play a 4-note riff, like that, and let the last note ring on the riff, that's an example of where I might want to use a little bit of vibrato just to emphasise that last note that's ringing on, whereas the other notes were played in succession. As an example. So give it a try. If you haven't done the string bending, have a go at that first, because the techniques that you use for that are the same that apply here. For example, if you want your vibrato to be quite a large shift in pitch, we're bending the string quite a lot, so we might need those other fingers backing it up to be able to perform that bend. If we're just doing a little vibrato, we're not moving the string much, we could just do it with one finger, because we've got enough strength just to move that string just a little bit. So depending on what you're wanting to achieve, what you're trying to play, have a go at it and practice the technique.